All right, ready to dive deep into some fascinating territory with this one. Right away, we hit this disclaimer. Cleanse your manas, mind, with practice of sadhana, and then go through literature, otherwise reality will be lost upon you. Wow.
It's a lot to unpack right off the bat.
It really is. What do you make of it?
Well, it definitely suggests that we need to, I guess, approach this material with a certain level of, well, mental preparation, almost a purification of the mind, Like it's not just casual reading here.
Not just reading words on a page, you're saying it's more about cultivating a state of being to even engage with it.
Yeah, definitely. A receptive state of being.
To even start to understand it. I mean, it sets the tone for a journey beyond the typical understanding of spirituality, wouldn't you say?
For sure.
Okay, so the author laying down this challenge is Shri Suresh Kumar Makam, a disciple of Shri Raghavendra Rao Sahib.
We'll be referring to him as Shri Suresh throughout this deep dive.
Right? And the book we're exploring is Shri Suresh's Seeker's Anguish, Pathway to Realization.
Which, yeah, it really digs into some pretty complex spiritual concepts, stuff that goes way beyond surface level.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking about the relationship between religion and spirituality, the power of the human heart, the nature of the mind, and even Shri Suresh's personal practice of Sahaj Marg. A lot to cover.
Yeah, a lot. Where should we start?
Well, one of the first things that really struck me was Shri Suresh's take on religion versus spirituality.
Okay.
He says, and this is a quote, "The end of religion is the beginning of spirituality."
Right. We've all heard these kinds of discussions, but
with Shri Suresh, it feels different.
it does. Like he's getting at something much more nuanced.
Exactly. So what resonates most with you about his explanation?
Well, he kind of lays out these stages, almost like a roadmap or something. It's like you start with the end of religion, then move to the beginning of spirituality, then to the beginning of reality, then real bliss, and finally, the destination.
Just those words.
It's a journey, right?
It evokes this sense of profound progression.
Like he's mapping out this journey of unfolding awareness from external frameworks of religion to the internal experience of spirituality, and then ultimately a deeper understanding of reality itself.
That's it. And he sees his own practice, Sahaj Marg, as a key part of that journey.
Absolutely.
And what I found so fascinating was how he gets into the specifics of his routine. Like he really gives us a glimpse into his lived experience.
Yes. In those details, they really bring it to life.
They do. Like when he talks about meditating before sunrise, focusing on the divine light in his heart.
And his approach to sleep, waking up in a state of remembrance of his master. It's incredible. It speaks to a whole other level of intentionality.
Like every single moment is infused with practice.
Exactly.
And speaking of practice, he also talks about these spiritual gatherings and celebrations that are central to Sahaj Marg. Things like Basanotsav and Krishna Janmastami. What do you make of those?
Well, I think it's important to remember that these gatherings are not just about rituals and ceremonies. They're really about community, creating a shared space for connecting with the divine and seeking blessings, but collectively. It's a reminder that spirituality isn't just this solo pursuit,
Yeah.
It can be a shared experience, one that, honestly, it can strengthen bonds and deepen understanding.
I love that point. And then there's Sri Suresh's deep dive into the mind in bhakti, which is devotion. He really breaks down the mind's levels, stages, and states. I have to admit, I got a little lost in all the intricacies.
It can be complex, all those layers and nuances.
Yeah.
But the main thing here is that Shri Suresh isn't just providing theory, right? He's emphasizing how important it is to actually understand all this for our own progress. Like, he sees self-knowledge as a crucial tool for transformation.
It's not just about quieting the mind, then. It's about understanding how it works.
Right.
So we can use it to move towards that bhakti, that devotion.
Yeah.
It really reframes the whole idea of mental discipline, doesn't it?
It does, because it's not about suppression. It's about harnessing the power of your mind for a higher purpose.
Okay, so then he moves into this analysis of the human condition. And he sees it as like inherently marked by a sense of separation from the divine.
Yeah.
And that this feeling, this separation, is at the root of so much of our suffering.
Right.
That really hit home for me. Have you ever felt that kind of ache, that sense of something missing, even when everything in your life seems to be going well?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all have on some level. It's like this deep longing for something more, something beyond the material world, a connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's like we're wired for it, this yearning for something more. And Sri Suresh isn't alone in this idea, right?
No, not at all. Lots of spiritual traditions talk about this idea of separation and the longing for union with the divine. What's fascinating is how he goes on to suggest a path, a method, and even a guide to bridge that gap.
And that's where his own master, Shri Babuji Maharaj, comes in, the founder of Sahaj Marg. And this concept of transmission, which is so central to this practice. Can you talk a little more about that?
Sure. So transmission, in this context, we're talking about the direct transfer of spiritual energy from the master to the disciple. It's not about intellectual knowledge here. We're talking about something more experiential, something that actually accelerates spiritual growth.
Okay, so it's like a catalyst.
Exactly. And here's where things get even more interesting. Sri Suresh actually shares that he received permission to utilize transmission from the very first time he met Shri Babuji Maharaj.
Really? The very first meeting?
Yeah.
That's amazing. It speaks to such a deep level of trust and connection right from the start.
It really does. And it highlights the role of the master in this tradition, not just as a teacher, but as a guide, a support system, and a conduit for this powerful, transformative energy.
So receiving this permission, though, it doesn't mean that it was all smooth sailing, right? I mean, surely there were challenges, both internal and external.
Oh, for sure. Sri Suresh actually talks about facing various obstacles and challenges throughout his own spiritual journey, navigating poverty, superstition, but he also hints at these internal battles he faced, the doubts, the anxieties that any seeker might encounter.
Makes you wonder what those specific challenges were. Did he ever doubt himself?
Right.
Did he ever question this whole path? It makes his story so much more relatable, though, doesn't it? After all, who hasn't faced some kind of obstacle, whether on a spiritual path or not?
I think that's one of the things that makes his teaching so powerful. He's not pretending that this is some kind of idealized, effortless path. He's being real, sharing his own experience with all its ups and downs.
And all the struggles. It makes him more human. Which actually brings me to another point he emphasizes, the importance of continuous learning and its transformative power. He wasn't just this spiritual practitioner. He was a lifelong learner.
Oh, yeah. His reading habits were incredible. He was reading everything from comics to complex philosophical texts.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it wasn't just passive reading either, He really engaged with the material, trying to understand different perspectives, different ways of thinking, and integrating them into his own worldview.
So it's like he saw learning as a way to constantly expand his understanding, not just of the world, but of himself.
Yeah. And he didn't limit himself to just spiritual or religious texts either. He explored all kinds of subjects, like he truly believed that all knowledge, in its own way, could contribute to spiritual growth.
That's fascinating.
It is.
What a concept. And, it makes me think about my own approach to learning. Am I truly open to new ideas?
That's a great question.
Do I seek out different perspectives, or do I just stick with what's comfortable? It's something to think about.
It is.
Speaking of reflection, Sri Suresh's teachings also really emphasize the importance of humility and dedication to serving others. And this is where we see another dimension of his character shining through.
It's true. He had such an unassuming nature, and he was so dedicated to helping others. And you see it over and over again in the stories about him.
It's like these qualities were woven into his very being. And it wasn't about grand gestures either.
Yeah, not on.
It was about embodying that humility in every action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He lived simply, really focused on what mattered, and his dedication to his spiritual practice and serving others, it never wavered. It was just part of everything he did. Like, it just emanated from him, this humility, this genuine kindness. And it created this space, I think, for real connection, for compassion.
Yeah. And he never wanted recognition for any of it or praise. In fact, he would kind of deflect it. Like there's that story about how he would insist on washing the feet of visitors who came to his house, no matter who they were.
It's powerful imagery. Like, he wasn't putting himself above anyone. It didn't matter what your status was or your position. Everyone was equal. Everyone deserved respect and care.
A reminder that sometimes true greatness is found in the simplest acts of service and kindness.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting how Sri Suresh viewed service like as an extension of his practice, a way to embody the love and compassion he was cultivating through his connection with the divine.
It wasn't some kind of duty or obligation. It
Right.
flowed from his inner state.
Exactly. It was part of living his spirituality.
It makes me think about transmission again. We were talking about how he received permission to utilize transmission from his very first meeting with Shri Babuji Maharaj,
Right.
which is incredible. But what do you think Shri Babuji Maharaj saw in him to give him such an honor so early on?
I think he recognized something special in Sri Suresh, a real capacity for spiritual growth, and this deep desire to serve. Like maybe he saw this potential, this ability to transmit that energy and use it for the benefit of others.
It's like he saw a seed waiting to sprout and bloom.
Exactly. And even with that potential, though, transmitting spiritual energy, it's not a simple thing, right?
Like flipping a switch.
Yeah. It's complex, it's nuanced, and I'm sure there were challenges along the way.
For sure. He talks about those challenges too, doesn't he? The obstacles and difficulties he faced on his path. And they weren't all external either, right?
No, not at all. He talks about these internal struggles too, the doubts, the anxieties that I think are a normal part of the spiritual journey.
He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, does he?
No, he doesn't. And I think that's what makes him and his teachings so relatable. We've all faced those moments of uncertainty, right? Those times when we question everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when we're pushing ourselves to grow,
Yeah.
stepping outside our comfort zones.
Exactly. And he's not saying it's easy. He's saying it's okay. It's part of the process.
Which brings us back to this idea of continuous learning. He was a lifelong learner, wasn't he? Always seeking knowledge, always expanding his understanding.
His reading habits were incredible. He was reading comics, he was reading philosophy, he was reading everything.
It's like he was hungry for knowledge,
Yeah.
you know? He saw it as a way to constantly evolve, to grow, to deepen his connection with himself and the world around him.
And he didn't limit himself to just one area either, like just spiritual texts. He saw value in all kinds of knowledge. It's like he saw this interconnectedness between everything.
Like everything is a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And that's something I think we can all learn from. This idea that learning is not just about accumulating facts or information. It's about cultivating a mindset of curiosity, openness, and a willingness to keep expanding our understanding, to keep growing.
It's about being a student of life.
Yes, approaching everything with a sense of wonder and a desire to learn.
So we've talked about a lot here, cleansing the mind, the journey from religion to spirituality, these spiritual gatherings, the role of the mind, the challenges, transmission, the internal struggles. It's a lot to process. What do you think the connecting thread is, the unifying principle that ties it all together?
I think at the core of everything Sri Suresh teaches is this idea of transformation. It's about actively engaging in a process of self-discovery, of growth, and ultimately moving toward a deeper connection with the divine, with ourselves, and with something bigger than ourselves.
And that's a journey we can all embark on, right? Doesn't matter where you come from or what you believe.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that desire, that inner yearning, and embracing the process with all its challenges and rewards.
And a big part of that is humility
Yeah.
and service.
Absolutely. Because when we step outside of ourselves, when we focus on serving others, we actually tap into a deeper source of joy, of connection, of meaning.
It's like that ripple effect, you know?
Yeah.
One small act of kindness can create waves that extend far beyond what we can even imagine.
So as we continue to explore Sri Suresh's teachings, I think the question we should all be asking ourselves is, how can I embody this spirit of service? How can I bring more compassion, more kindness, more generosity into my own life and into the world?
Because it doesn't have to be about grand gestures.
Yeah.
It's the little things, the everyday acts of kindness that make a difference. A kind word, a helping hand, a listening ear.
It's about shifting our focus from me to we, recognizing that we are all in this together. And when we support each other, when we lift each other up, we create a more loving, more compassionate, and ultimately more fulfilling world for everyone. It's a beautiful vision, a world where these principles, this humility, this service, these are the things that guide us, not just personally, but as a society, in our communities, in our institutions.
And in our relationship with the planet.
Exactly.
It's a vision we can all work towards, though. Starting with ourselves, right? Our own thoughts, our actions, our words.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Sri Suresh's teachings, let's think about what really stood out, what sparked our curiosity, what touched our hearts, and, most importantly, what are we going to do about it? What actions can we take to really integrate these principles into our daily lives? Not just understand them intellectually, but really live them.
It's a great question, and one I hope our listeners will consider too. We've only scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive has given everyone a glimpse into Sri Suresh's unique perspective on spirituality, on self-discovery, on this idea of the transformative power of service.
And it doesn't end here, right? It's an ongoing journey.
Absolutely. And one that we can all choose to be a part of.
Every choice we make, every act of kindness, every step we take towards living a more meaningful, purposeful life, it's all part of the journey.
It's been an incredible exploration. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share it with everyone. We've covered so much, from mental preparation to the power of the mind, the challenges of transmission, the importance of learning, and of course, the beauty of humility and service.
And hopefully our listeners will continue to reflect on these teachings, to let them guide them on their own journeys. Because Sri Suresh's work, it's truly a gift. It's a treasure trove of wisdom, and it's there for all of us to explore.
And remember, the journey doesn't stop here. It continues with every conscious step we take, every act of kindness we offer, every moment that we choose to live in alignment with our highest aspirations. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.